series from Side Business School, featuring some of the extraordinary personalities who were offered a place on the Executive MBA here at Oxford University. I'm Cathy Harvey. As Associate Dean, I've been involved with the people who've embarked on this journey for over half the 20 years since the programme was established. This is my chance to reconnect with them and to hear more about their struggles and their achievements, personal and professional, and to learn the leadership lessons we can all take from these inspiring alumni.
I don't ever feel highs and lows on business decisions. Somebody asked me the other day, do you celebrate these milestones? And I don't, because I think it's just a turn of a page. It's the next chapter. So I just kind of keep looking at what's going to be next and try to be as logical as I can.
I'm joined for this episode of the podcast by James Hall. James is a serial entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience of building and selling businesses. Along the way, he served as president and CEO of a children's hospital charity, and after completing his executive MBA at Oxford, as director of the Entrepreneurship Centre at the Side Business School. Many of James's successful businesses have centred on the intersection of technology and insurance, and the latest, Ocker, offers insurance in the carbon credit market. We'll come back, James, to Ocker later, but first of all, tell me a bit about you and about where you came from. Where did you grow up and what was your family like?
It's a big question, Cathy. I think it's, probably the traditional American story. So I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. Father was kind of a factory worker at Ford Motor Company. And, while it's a family that maybe didn't have all the means that other families had, it definitely had a lot of love and a lot of inspiration. So, yeah, I just grew up, I'd say, a childhood there, and it was a good family.
But you didn't follow the traditional path of going to university. You left school early, that's right.
Yeah, in my family, it was never intended that I would say people like me would go to university. So it was an expectation that post-high school you would enter the workforce. So there was never really a clear line of sight to university, and never felt like it was a place I belonged. So I actually dropped out of high school, dropped out at about 17, and went to work first as a bricklayer, and then fell into the insurance sector, which has been just a great sector throughout my career and something I'm decent at. So it tends to work out pretty well.
So you say fell into the insurance sector, but what do you mean?
Oh, it just means that I had an uncle, a very special uncle that was in the business, and I had asked him if I could make any money in that business, and he said, "Sure, you'll make $30,000 or $40,000 a year," and I thought I'd be incredibly wealthy with that. So, being money motivated, I left Detroit, Michigan, and moved to Arizona and started in the insurance business, basically selling insurance on a door-to-door basis. Yeah, so I think I was a professional porch climber, just every day knocked on doors and sold insurance, and it was kind of a life lesson at that point. So that was kind of like, I guess, 18 to maybe 20 or 21 years old, and you definitely learn how to communicate with people, I think, in that experience.
You definitely do, being a door-to-door salesman, that's for sure. So how did you move on from that life to the next step of your career?
Looking back, it's been a while, but you moved into management. I worked for a single organization. When I say worked, I had never been on a salary of any sort. I always worked on commission, but moved into management and then floated around the U.S. So did my stint in Boston and New York, and built a pretty big sales organization for that organization. And at 27, I had 10 years there, and they had a vesting requirement where you were vested for all of your what they called renewal commissions, and then they had a stock program. And coming from what I would say is like nothing, I had saved about $3 million at 27. So I just decided it was time to give it a shot on my own. I was actually flying on the company jet with the president and had said I was going to leave. And he was like, "Why in the world would you leave? You're a high school dropout and you're the highest paid person in the organization." And I was like, "Because I'm always flying on your plane. I'd like to see if I can do it on my own." So left there. That was 1997. Took what I had and created the first company, and The story is always funny. It's like a traditional entrepreneur story. So in the first 12 months of launching the first company, which is called National Benefits, lost about 80% of all of my assets and savings. So it was down to just feeling like life was pretty well made to feeling like life was pretty desperate. But ended up taking the remaining assets that I had and bought a small company in Salt Lake City, Utah. It was doing about $800,000 a year of revenue, and we built that into about $100 million gross revenue company in about 3 or 4 years. So it just turned around and then exited that one in 2004 or 5, somewhere in that range.
So National Benefits then was the first company you started yourself. That was your company, your idea. But just going back, to save $3 million at the age of 27, you must have had a very frugal lifestyle or been incredibly skilled or fortunate to save that much money. Most 27-year-olds would be delighted to save $3 million.
Yeah, I think just always lived by this basis of, spend less than you make. And I wouldn't say it was about being frugal. I think it was probably about the fact that I earned a great deal of money and then was able to save. So it did keep my lifestyle in, I would say, a responsible manner, but still a really pleasant manner, but mostly just the ability to earn. So throughout those years in my 20s, I earned substantial amounts of money compared to, I would say, peers at that point in time.
You took National Benefits to a huge amount of success in a very short period of time, and that's actually been a hallmark of a few of the businesses you've set up, that they've grown very, very quickly. For many people listening, I think, the question arises, what's the secret to that?
I think you always have to have a unique offering to customers that, you understand the value proposition to the customers and then how to access those customers. So in any business, it's about that basic proposition to the customer. So know who your customer is and know what your value proposition is to the customer and make sure that it's simple and clear. That's been, I think, the secret, and that's the advice I give most entrepreneurs is you can't have the value proposition be cloudy. It's got to be as crystal clear and as simple as possible to be understandable.
You went from National Benefits to set up another company, I think. Is that right? Or was that the point at which you took a break and decided to run a charity?
Did a couple of things at that point in time. Built another company post that. So this is 2004 and 5. In the U.S., the HR administration process was still done fairly manually. So we saw an opportunity to innovate that through technology. So it was a great experience. We built a company called ebenefits.com, which essentially automated all of the HR processes in the U.S. around the employee benefits processes. And a great experience. We landed in India, had never been to India, went to see a few different cities from Chennai to Bangalore to Bombay to choose a city to build out an office of programmers. We built quite a few programmers in a very short period of time, built the software in about 6 months, and then launched the software in the U.S. And then we exited that company within 2 years to one of our partners that we started with. So it was a great experience. It was really fast and got it to a level and then turned it over to someone else for the next phase of growth. It's still going today, a great organization. And at that point in time, I'd think post that company, 2 things happened. One is that I had a chip on my shoulder for being uneducated. Most of my peers had various degrees from, named universities. And whilst I had a great deal of success, I didn't have that education. So, and my kids who I have 3 children, and all 3 children, kind of at the dinner table, I would talk about going to private school and how important education was. And they started saying, well, you didn't. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to fix this. So I enrolled in a liberal arts university there in Utah and did a bachelor degree from 2006 to 2009. At the same time, the Children's Miracle Network, I was on the board at that point in time, and the founder and CEO was leaving after 24 years. And I was approached to apply for the role and be his successor. Went through the search process and was selected. And I thought it was a unique opportunity, an honorable opportunity to give back. I feel like I did really well for the Organization for Children's Healthcare, which is something I care about. We raised and gave away about $1 billion during my 3 years. The organization was amazing. The team was amazing, and just felt good. Like if there's anything, it's just an opportunity and a career split to bring what I would say is entrepreneurial skill sets and professionalized management to a charitable organization. And sometimes the culture and charities is slightly different. But I think some of the values still exist at Children's Miracle Network that we brought during that small tenure. And it's a great organization. I'm really proud of the service.
So being president and CEO of the Children's Miracle Hospital charity was really part of your break from that career as a very driven entrepreneur to do something different. And then you had this rather curious idea that you were going to go further in your education and study for an executive MBA. Tell me how you ended up applying for Oxford.
I should just back up. The story starts a little bit different. So before I did the bachelor degree, I had applied at the University of Michigan's executive education program. The significance of this story is that I grew up very close to the university and was always told it was for people other than me. I actually had never stepped foot on the campus even as a child. I just thought I don't belong there. So when I was going through this dinner conversation with my children, I decided I would fix this. So I went and applied and interviewed at the University of Michigan, stating that I didn't have an undergraduate degree, and I was accepted. So if you can imagine, I called my mother with all these tears, and I'm really happy, and then I go home and tell my children I've gotten in, and they're like, "Oh, you're cheating again." and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, okay." So I decided at that point to do the undergraduate degree and just follow the path that most people would follow. Finishing that undergrad degree in 2009, I knew that I would do an MBA, and so I only looked at two schools, which was Harvard and Oxford, and had applied at both. And the Oxford interview was first, and I walked into this 1,000-year-old city in Oxford and just fell in love with it and was like, "That's it. This is where I'm going to go." And that's how I got here. Do
you remember anything about the interview and about the application that you wrote?
I don't remember the application. I just remember being so nervous and thought, what am I doing here, and how will I get in, and will they accept me? And so I think the nerves just were definitely at the highest level I normally experience in life.
More nervous than making big business decisions?
I don't ever feel highs and lows on business decisions. Somebody asked me the other day, like, do you celebrate these milestones? And I don't, because I think it's just a turn of a page. It's the next chapter. So whether it's an exit, a formation, a fundraise, a significant agreement, contract, whatever it might be, I really don't feel the highs or the lows that come with that. It's just work, and it's a new chapter as to what's going to be built, and there's always a future. So I think for me, you could say tormented in some ways, because I just constantly think about what's next, and have lived life that way. So I just kind of keep looking at what's going to be next and try to be as logical as I can and non-emotional, which probably is bad in other areas of life, but it's definitely me.
I think that's really interesting that you see the drive to discover what's next as the most important thing that drives you, and not what's going to be the biggest success. Will this business be more successful than the business I had before? I wonder where that comes from.
I don't know where it comes from. I just think that for me, the interest that I have is in the future and being a part of that future. So being a thought leader in that future and spending time thinking about what the future looks like. I think I've got real views about humanity, where I think humanity is slow to recognize time, mainly because we have short-term cycles in just about all of the developed worlds. And I think having the lens of really what's it going to be like in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years and 100 years is different. And so I think it's all just a journey that we're fortunate to be a part of the journey and apply ourselves, apply our knowledge, and apply our energy and ambition to that.
So you and I met really when you were coming to the end of your executive MBA, and I was just starting my role as the director of the executive MBA. And I do remember you coming to my office and and telling me about your experience and saying, is there anything I can do to help? And it felt just very, very nice to have someone who was a student and about to become a graduate and about to become the director of the Entrepreneurship Centre, offering me the kind of comradeship and assistance that I was going to need in my role. Tell us a little bit about your role directing Side Business School's Entrepreneurship Centre and why you did that when you could have gone straight to just starting another business.
Well, being a part of Oxford's just been a great honor. So I would say first and foremost, I always think about honor. I think Children's Miracle Network is the same way. It's an honorable opportunity to serve. And I felt like with the Entrepreneurship Center at the business school and its stage of growth at that point in time, it was just an honor to be able to try to lay some form of a foundation for what could be. And I developed a lot of, I would say, empathy and care for the bright minds and the students that come through Oxford. Also, I think the ability to, help cross-pollinate the talent of all the scientists and all the research around the university to what's probably identified as unbridled enthusiasm and ambition of business students is unique, and it's beautiful. To me, it's like art. It's just something to watch and be a part of and observe and take memories from. We created something called the Seed Fund, which I think most people would view as very successful. And the first investment was just a tremendous young entrepreneur. And so to know him at that point in time when he was like 21 to 22 and coming up with his ideas. So you get a first-class seat at watching bright minds put forth great ambition towards something that they're very passionate about.
I always think of entrepreneurship as being about risk and decision making. And you have taken many risks and made many decisions. I think you've started 3 companies, since the Entrepreneurship Centre. What worries you? What really makes you pause and think? Because you're such a calm, even character, James. So what really rattles you and makes you worry about the risks you're taking?
Nothing. I don't have the highs and I don't have the lows. I think that you choose to take risk. You go into it with an expectation that most entrepreneurial efforts are going to fail. So if you can do it right and grow something and build something that provides value to its customers, and you have an access to the customers or a direction of how you're going to access and get to the market, I don't really feel any of those risks or stresses from that risk. It's just an opportunity to try.
But as the leader of an entrepreneurial venture, you have to take your team with you. How do you manage your team's expectations and the concerns of your employees when you know that you're running a business that could succeed but could also fail?
I think it's really simple. I don't think it's just with your employees. I think it's being honest up front, making sure everyone understands what the risks are and what the rewards are, and letting people sign up to it without rose-colored lenses. Like, I think everyone appreciates the honesty and directness and communication and knowing where we are. And I think you gain loyalty from that communication and honesty with employees.
So since the Entrepreneurship Centre, you went on to set up Salty, which was a kind of tech insurance company, and then embedded insurance, and now Ocker. Can you tell me a little bit about the connection between each of those 3 and the trajectory that you've been on by building those businesses?
Yeah, there's one in between, which was probably a great success. I think what happened from there, the trajectory was the Entrepreneurship Center started leading that in 2012. And I think what I found is like the culture inside academia is a bit slower than entrepreneurs. And yeah, for me, I just felt this real pull of wanting to be an entrepreneur again and trying. So I had been really looking at the future of insurance and the crossroads of technology and how you would take such a massive regulated market and provide a better experience. And mostly because I believe insurance should be a community resource of pooled risk. And it's become this large financial instrument and marketplace that I think has a lot of friction, and friction being excess cost. And it doesn't really provide the peace of mind and the, customers aren't really happy with insurance. They pay it because they think they have to, not because they think it's good for them. And we thought we could change that with technology and transparency and a better user experience. So as we built out this business model, we created a company called Salty that worked on solving this kind of big world problem. So our view is that nobody wants to buy insurance because it's always stressful, complicated, and confusing, and yet everyone needs it. So we started with that as a macro level issue and then said, how can technology be applied? And we came up with this basis of embedding insurance inside the customer's journey, where the right policy would be integrated directly into the customer's journey without any human engagement. And that's what we thought was a decent thesis to try to solve for. So we created the company. We did a really good job of building that out in the U.S. marketplace. But in its, I want to say about 23 months into it, we went to develop some commercial contracts with what you'd call the ERP systems that we were trying to embed the policy in. And the largest of those stated they wouldn't give us commercial terms. They wanted to buy us. We said that we weren't for sale. And they said, well, we have to buy you now because once we give you commercial terms, it'll be too expensive to buy you. And we said, well, we're not for sale. But then they wrote a very, very, very large check. So we sold that one in 27 months.
You've always sold your businesses and not taken them to IPO. There's an old phrase, it's never a bad time to take a profit. And you seem to have taken the view that, it's important to know when to get out as well as when to build something up.
I generally think of it as just math. If somebody is going to pay an extremely excess premium against what you think the current value is, then it's the time factor. And we've been fortunate enough to build things where people are willing to pay a number that's beyond that. And so we've exited, and it's really just about time value of money. Like, that's not our preference. It just happens to be the offers that have come, and so you have to entertain those.
You see, not every entrepreneur would take that view. Many entrepreneurs hang on until the VCs sack them sometimes. And it's very common to follow the dream right to the point where it doesn't work any longer or it's incredibly successful. What do you think enables you to make that very logical judgment about the time to get out?
I think you're getting to my personality flaws, Kathy. So I try not to be emotional, so just try to be logical. And I think a lot of people they tie their identities to their work, and they're emotionally engaged in that, and that's a tough break. I really have empathy for those that think, what are they going to do next? Versus for me, I just think, I'll do something next that's not going to stop the way I think, and it's not going to stop the progress that I see in the world. So, yeah, I just don't have that emotional engagement in it.
You went on to replicate the model in some way with another insurance company, Embedded Insurance, and now you have a company that looks at insuring carbon credits. Can you just say a little bit about that? So tell me about Oka, and then a little bit about how you build the teams around your companies.
Well, Oka is called Oka, the Carbon Insurance Company. And so that research started about 3 years ago as I was looking at this market. So reforestation and the environment is something that's very, very important to me. And so I started looking at this and watching the market develop and thought that the market doesn't have insurance and it needs insurance, and we could actually utilize our talents to build this out. And after the research, we were trying to figure out, is this a business? Could it be a business? And what's this look like? And knowing that no markets develop, on a straight line, that there would be some ebbs and flows in the development of the carbon market. But we thought the opportunity was right. And so we launched it. The next thing, I should say, before we launched it, we looked for, do we have a team? And could we put that core nucleus of a team together? That organization's led by a CEO named Chris Slater, who's the best person I've ever worked with. He's just an amazing operator, builds a strong culture amongst his employees. They're just so disciplined and so good at what they're doing. And I think the company is well on its way to success. So it's about 18 months into it now since it's been operating. It's reached all of its milestones. It's exactly where it should be. and it's a leader. It's it has a first mover advantage. It's the only company that's insuring carbon credits today. It won't always be that. So, I often tell Chris, you got to be leery of the downsides of being a first mover, and you got to be able to take advantage of that being a first mover. But they're doing an amazing job. I think they're really ingraining themselves in the ecosystem of carbon credits. They need to be the connecting thread for all of that ecosystem around carbon credits. And I think that it will provide more confidence in carbon credits for the buyers of those, and good organization.
A lot's been written about leadership and different kinds of leadership. For you, what does it mean to lead in the companies that you started?
I start with servant-based leadership. So I think that you've got to serve the people and stakeholders. So sometimes I see leaders that view that as just their internal group, so maybe their employees or something of that sort. But I think you're serving all of the stakeholders inside your organization and all of that's connected to it. So that would be your vendors, your customers, your investors, your team. That servant-based leadership has to flow through the entire organization and an entire value proposition. And I think that's how you get to being really focused in on your value proposition, is that you're just super loyal to the basis of serving others. And if you are serving others, then you can always ask yourself in each interaction of the stakeholder groups is, how are you serving them? And that's where I think the best leadership comes from.
When you applied to Oxford's Executive MBA program, you were writing, in a sense, an application about your future and what you wanted for your future. So what kind of application would you write now for your future?
Good question, Kathy. I think if I'm writing an application today, it would be about, making a difference in these next 30 years of life and really being able to understand what the future looks like for humanity. So I think we have lots of issues in our world. I would say there's almost like dislocations that are happening in the world. And I think that's coming from advancements in technology. So part of the uncertainty in our world today from a peace standpoint is also happening because there's massive amounts of dislocation of knowledge and technology that's happening throughout humanity, and it seems to be going faster than I ever imagined. So I'd just like to be a part of that, and I'd like to understand it, and I'd like to be a thought leader and be in those conversations as we're looking at the future.
When you talk about dislocations, it's everything from geopolitics to technology to, the way we live our lives.
Yeah.
What concerns you most?
I think our future's bright. I just think that you got to allow everybody to catch up with the changes that are happening.
So when you're at home and you're sitting with your children now, what do you think their view is of what you've achieved?
Really good question. It's one that always concerns me. So I think that children are proud. I do think that sometimes they feel that the things I've accomplished in life are unachievable to them, and that makes me sad. I want them to always know they can do anything. They can take it further. So it's, the further you walk into the horizon, the further you see, and I want them to see it. Yeah, I hope that they view that everything is achievable.
James, thank you very much indeed. As usual, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
So what's your favourite place? Oxford or Detroit or even somewhere else?
I have a number of residences around the world, but I have one home, and that's Oxford. The challenge for me in life is that my heart is in Oxford and Europe in general, and my businesses and my family are in the U.S., so I end up crossing the pond, I would say, often.
Well, your Oxford family are very pleased when you're here. James, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll be back with another episode of The Application, so do look out for it wherever you usually get your podcasts. If you'd like to know more about Saïd Business School, take a look at the Oxford Answers section on our website, or check out the programme pages for more inspiring stories about our Executive MBA alumni. The application is produced by Philippa Goodrich and Oxford Digital Media. I'm Kathy Harvey, Associate Dean at Saïd Business School. Thank you for listening.